Thank you for having me. I would like to start with showing you a small film that we produced. No, I need some. I feel so much part of history and art history, and there was by Robert and by David such a nice lecture that I thought that, well, we are so much from practicalities and museums and arranging things that I think, well, let's start by the end, or by the start that we have today. You're now facing the new public accessible storage for the Boijmans. It's over here. You see our tower. It now is hiding between the museum that Van der Steur built in 1935. The street, the area, is a lot greener than you will experience it today. It's a new kind of approach to the museum. This is the entrance from 1935. I think the buses will stay and maybe increase a little. And here you see the entrance of the accessible storage. This is the new institute, former architecture museum. And now we fly over the city a little and see more green. You see an entirely 100% mirror, which declines everything to 10%. So you see yourself in a kind of, I think in a kind of tilers, but then in a real situation. And so you see the panorama of the city in the surrounding. We have taken as much as we can with models, photos, etc. A kind of, well, we have tried to develop a feeling what you will experience when you approach the depot. You will see a lot of clouds and blue. You will see the skyline of the city, and because of the convex of the skin of the building, you will also see yourself on the square. And you can take selfies with 300 people, which is, of course, something that's very important when you start a museum. It takes a lot of minute, and now this is my car. Whose car is it? I don't know. The only car in the area. So this is the museum's park at this moment. This is the Kunsthal over there. And now we try to enter the building. This is the rooftop garden with the restaurant. It's accessible all day and in the evening. You don't have to pay any entrance fees for that. The square will be used for artworks, so the reflection of the artwork on the skin of the building will change every 3 years, which makes it a very beautiful selfie, because you're in this artwork. 50% of the main floor is for handling art, 50% is for giving access to our audience. And then the building is getting bigger when you come to the 6th floor. This is the atrium. We are still developing this part of the building. And now you see in the atrium some of the rooms. This is a room that you can enter, as David told you, with a guided tour. You can ask for things in the racks, but you cannot touch these racks yourself. Though every painting and every artwork has its own position, and you can inform yourself on beforehand if you would like to see a gift from your family or an artwork that you missed in the museum or whatever. We are still designing how this should look. We put on the cages there because we thought that the municipality would never accept it when they were not there. This is one of the galleries where we would like to show the practice of the museum. We do not intend to make exhibitions, but we will show collections, and maybe we will also do short experiments with shows that we try to develop or will develop for the museum. This is a floor of 1,000 square meters, and that is open for bigger pieces. So the extra large pieces from the collection can be installed there. This is also a piece from the collection, Matisse-Wonen, but this is the floor where you have the garden and the cafe. It's 39 meters, sorry, and it gives you the feeling of a kind of park. And so it's a space that is very public and very open. It will be also one of the sites, you know, Rotterdam. We have a kind of history with the Second World War, not as devastating as the Warsaw history, but there's a lot of things changed in the city too. And this will certainly be one of the buildings that people look for and will go to when they visit the city. I don't know if it's an icon, I don't know. It's not so very important. So after hearing your beautiful lectures, I thought, well, just show the result. And it's not so very interesting how we went to this final decision to build this building. We have started to build it, so it's now in 2 years it will be there. And I thought that it would be nice after 10 years of bailing out water and convincing the landlord and convincing the municipality. 4 aldermen and 2 burgomasters have passed. 3 floods in the museum that we are very severe, and many mean letters and wet letters. And now this is the position where we are. And I would like to take you through a brief history of the museum so that you can see the connection between our solutions and how we came this far. But some things to elaborate on, and that's also the questions that we have on a daily basis in our office, is what do you do with this 8% issue? So we have 150,000 pieces in the collection. In general, 7% is mounted, is visible on a daily basis. What to do with the 93%, and how do you cope with that? Can we start a new museum typology? Is it possible to talk about museums as a form of species that develop? What is interesting to visitors? I mean, you can show a lot, but what would people like to know? What would they like to learn? What is information that is of value to a general visitor? We go from a curated museum to an uncurated depot. And so the art is uncurated and it's not curated. So many things, coincidence, a kind of chaos, are part of your experience in the new storage. We would like to involve as many people as possible in heritage care. We think that showing your things is a kind of transparency that belongs to our times. But we also think that it's very important to show people that are not accustomed to heritage, moving heritage, that they see how much we care. And so it's not a thing that is hidden away, it's a thing that we cherish like a baby. And that's what we do, and that's what you see in the conservatories, that's what you see in the rooms. For that reason we have all these rules that you cannot touch it, that we lower the light, etc. Giving an example of how careful you are with heritage means that many people will try to copy that. Another question is, of course, what will the international family of museums think about this? We know at this moment that about, I think, 30,000 professionals are following us. The V&A is more or less copying it in the Docklands. We are talking all over the world on congresses because people would like to follow it. I think most of them would like to learn from our mistakes, but that's also all in the game. It doesn't matter, we understand. And we learned a lot too from the more or less open storages that have been executed already all over the world, because many people tried to find a form to get along with the things that were not seen or stayed unseen. I think very important is also that, the skills that you have as a museum, as a conservator, as a tour guide, that you share those and that you show your interest. So this was a brief kind of thing that we hope to discuss later with you. If you would ask me what kind of museum you like, I would very quickly show you just some of them. I like very much the Museum in Winterthur. It's a real Bode museum. It's beautiful. It always displays the best parts of the collection. It has daylight. Do you know it? You should go there. Every time I go to Switzerland, I stop 1 or 2 hours in this museum, because you experience the art without glass and anything in a beautiful way. It's great. But the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico shows what the Spanish invaders did to the country. And you see 72 cultures that are still alive in this museum. So that's wonderful as well. Columba, you can't miss Columba in Cologne, of course. Zumthor built it. And it's the most beautiful museum that shares a religious collection of the Diocese of Cologne with today's art. And you see that the same kind of magic feeling about religiosity is in this building and kept there very well. That's the wrong one. Well, you can continue with this. The Sumayo Museum, Carlos Slim in Mexico made it. Who visited this? It is the biggest failure in the past 10 years because everything he bought is piled up here. There's on the top floor 900 works by Rodin. He was buying with a couple of people all things that were made by the studio or by Rodin himself. If you search any Rodin, call Carlos Slim. But there's also a floor with all paintings made with pictures from Venice, so from all over history. And it's very strange. It's a kind of museum of an amateur that can go wrong. It can be also a very good choice to become a museum person, of course. My favorites are always the Wunderkammers, and those are the ones that we come from, of course. So the art room for the connoisseur who lived in the 18th century. But it's not only an art room; it's also a room where you show your scientific belongings, you show your development, you show on what level you operate as a human being. And one of my other favorites is, of course, Mr. John Soane's museum. These were illegal photos that I took during a private tour. I'm allowed to show them. You're not allowed to take pictures of those. The professional ones from the Soane Museum are a lot better too, so you enjoy the website. But what is so wonderful about this museum, I think, is that Mr. Soane, who was an architecture professor, went to many countries in Egypt and Greece area, and took copies, but also originals, to his homes. You know it all. You visited this, just to tell his students how beautiful architecture is, and they could experience it. And that's one of the important things that I learned, because you can tell about art and you can have websites, but a storage is not a website. Art has a size and has a temperature and has a texture and has a kind of magnetic feeling. I mean, 3 sentences more and we are talking about Kant and how he thought that skins of artworks gave information to you and to us. This is the Boijmans from the back. You recognize our tower. And we have a history of 170 years. This is our second building. This is our 4th building. There's also a 5th building over there. So we were always growing and increasing. And the collection increased immensely. Every new building made new collections possible. You see a kind of overview. Of course, our most important piece, maybe the Tower of Babel by Bruegel. But we have quite an interesting collection of surrealism. We do still continue to collect, and at this moment we are especially interested in Scandinavian art, which is still very accessible to Dutch museums. But the contemporary part, this is a piece by Jim Shaw, which is a backdrop. His regular style and his regular size. It's too big to show in the museum, but we did just buy it, and we hope that we can put it somewhere in the storage. And sometimes we find a kind of spot. And so we are much worse than any museum. We collect more than we can show, and we collect even things that we cannot show in the biggest rooms that we have. And maybe it's not so bad because you take care of such things. And once I was able to show it in the Rotterdam Theatre during a lecture. So they invited me to do a lecture about acquisitions. And this piece was in the theatre up there. And at the moment I clicked and then it fell down, I survived, and the piece was visible. So it was great. So we never thought that this could happen. Beautiful collections, of course, with Bos, with an unknown, anonymous master from Bruges, 1410. Great things that you will know and that you will recognize. We have a permanent collection. Many of you know. This is a room with our 16th and 17th century. Tower of Babel is over there. And we do great exhibitions. So it's a kind of combination between the collection and the exhibitions. This is a show on Erasmus with one of the pieces that we own from Hieronymus Bos. This is an early masters exhibition, Dutchman from the 1500s, made by Friso Lammertse, who is here in the room and who is a member. Was an enormous achievement, this is Van Eyck, the road to Van Eyck. We were able to do a show with originals by Van Eyck, and we even found a drawing from the studio of Van Eyck, with the help of many colleagues. So it was great to do this. This was a show about Bos and Bruegel recently, so just to give you a kind of feeling what kind of ambitions we have. And one of the other things that you should know about the Boijmans, next to the collection and next to the exhibitions, is that about 1,750 collectors donated over 50,000 pieces to the museum. And so that is really, and it's still growing, still increasing. And Boijmans and Van Beuningen are, of course, very important there in our names. But this is all collectors from the collection. They are still with us. We know their testaments, we know their last will, we know what they wanted with the collection. And some of them even donated money, like Mr. Bierens de Haan. For that reason, our print room is still very active and can still develop also in a contemporary way. And that goes on. This is 3 of our main beneficiaries. You know them probably by name. And this is some of the pieces that they donated to the museum. Mrs. Lutjens came with this beautiful Beckman a couple of years ago. Bert Kreuk, who's very much in the news now because he doesn't like the art world too much at this moment, donated this John Bock to us. And Mr. Han Nefkens commissioned many artists in the museum to do a permanent work. But we also are now quite far with collecting the work of Victor and Rolf, because we think it's very experimental and very interesting for the museum. And so it's a continuum. And the director who started this in 1935, also by building the museum, is Mr. Hannema. He was a marvelous director. He was, I think, is it number 7? Number 6? I'm 13, so just to know, yeah. And the next one will be number 14. So we continue. And this is the museum as it was built by Mr. Hannema. So this photo is from 1933, I think. And one of the nice things about the photo is that Hannema cared so much about the daylight, and Mr. van der Steur as well, that one of the rooms was done in a model, 1-to-1, in the garden, just to see 360 days a year how the sunlight was coming into the museum. And then he developed the light system that makes the museum a real daylight museum at this moment. So this was a very well prepared museum. They have books of traveling through the world, going to Basel, going to Stockholm, to see the best solutions for museums everywhere. And then they finished this museum. A very nice historic thing is that there was no storage planned in the museum. So you see many cellars, but that was for installations, quite good. Some of them are still existing at this moment and still work. But it was not necessary to do storage because everything would be on the wall. And it's true because the influx, the increase of donations in 35, 36, 37 was enormous because the collectors of the bigger surrounding in the Netherlands saw all these empty rooms and thought, this makes sense, now we can donate. And so building a big empty museum could be a strategy to improve the quantity for your collection. I mean, it was not quality, it's quantity, what I said. So this is a very nice historic picture, and it continues. Mr. Bierens de Haan was responsible for this great collection that is still flourishing. But this comes more deeper into the history of, well, the idea. I started in the museum in 2004 in summer, and it was a very nice couple of weeks because my predecessor, Chris Derkon, was always communicating with everybody in the museum by the media, and I said, okay, I'll turn it around and I'll talk for 100 days just with the staff and just with everybody who works in the museum. And it was unlimited, so you could come in my room for an hour or for 3 hours, or you could return 3 times. And so many secrets of the museum were unfolded to me. And one of the unfolded things was that people were starting to talk about, well, the flood of 1999. Some of the former colleagues are also in the room here, but the flood of 1999 came in 2 or 3 of the talks back, and people elaborated on that. They said, well, we managed to save the collection, but the collection was in the cellar because there was no storage, but we had a cellar and we had all installations there, etc. And well, climate change, a change in the water management in Rotterdam, and suddenly all this water poured in the museum. And I thought, well, that's not true. No, it's an exaggeration, I don't know. And in 2005, after 1 year, my first flood appeared. And it was a terrible experience. Mr. Bierens de Haan didn't know about it, and it's at this moment, it's regular that we have once a year a flood. It was terrible. The water poured in under all circumstances, and it also depending on the wind, it came from the east or from the west. If it rained longer than 13 hours, it came from the surface because the sources were not able to get rid of it, of all the water. And so you cannot really predict it, and you could not really do anything about it. So we started to campaign. And that was something that was necessary because they didn't believe. You see a lot younger director. It's 12 years ago. Sorry for that, but it's a historic photo. The first thing that we did was make an inventory of risks. The alderman who I visited in 2005 with the it was a kind of I think a verdict by a heritage institution who are asked to go to all the storages of the museum. It were quite some. And I said to them, could you have a look what we do with it? Is this what we can repair? And after 3 weeks they came to me and they said, none of them is good enough. And so you should really go away with your 150,000 pieces out of all the storages that you now have. And the worst one was, sorry to say this, but was the print collections, because that was stored in -6. And so the general level of the cellar is -3 meters. This was on -6. And you could also see it because many silverfish and paperfish was in the collection. They especially liked the work of Co Westerik because he had a kind of glue that was soft and it tasted even nice. And so, I mean, Rembrandt was safe and Grunewald was safe, but Westerik really had a problem. And as long as you know where they are, the silverfish, the problem can be controlled. But it was not the way to proceed. And then we found, luckily, with the team that was present in the museum, we found a room to change into a print room. So what you see here is the vault where we keep our round and about 75,000 prints, works on paper. We don't know exactly how many we have because it's not completely registered, but it's about 75,000. And you see also the exhibition room where we make directly from the storage exhibitions, many a year, 15, 10, doesn't matter. And even there's a program, you can find what we have, you can tick on the glass and then they will put here, they put the work that you would like to see. And so there's really a kind of interaction between audience and between staff people that are constantly working there. And it's a kind of, first idea that things could be open and could be also visible for audience, that you can also ask for things. Why not? We are there, so why wouldn't we? That was one of the first things that started us to think about a public accessible depot. That was quite important. What should a new storage do? Because what do we do? I have some thoughts about this, of course. I think a museum should always connect to its collection in the most physical form. I think that we should be very careful with the pile of things that we have in our storage. But what will happen when things are out of sight and out of mind? I think that Robert stated that some things are lost if the community cannot really see them anymore. But I do believe that things can get lost in a museum as well. And that a museum can never be the only end of a provenance of an artwork. Maybe some artworks will have a better chance when they go back to people or to collectors that love them a lot and give them a context that brings them into another kind of atmosphere of knowledge. Why would we be the solution for all heritage as a museum? I don't know. Of course, we love the art and we love to take care for the art, but I'm not so very sure that we are the end of all provenances. And collecting more and more means also that you select. So what you do is that you add quality. That's why we collect. You find things that you did not see before. You find things that your predecessors did not see before. But it means that the hierarchy in your museum is also changing, and that some things go to another level. And sometimes they go so far to another level that nobody knows about them anymore. And that's what happened in the Boijmans as well. Sometimes it's very nice that we just start in the rooms with a conservation project. At this moment we do the project that is dealing with Kant, so with embroidery and all kinds of fabrics. We have a collection of, that said our colleague to me in a certain meeting. Sjarel, do you know we have 5 cubic meters of embroidery? Mieke Simon Thomas. And I said, okay, what will you do with it? What do we do with it? And she said, well, we don't know it really. I don't know if it fits in the collection. We know that who donated it, but we should open it. And I said, okay, and so we are going to de-accession it, because we didn't know what it was and we didn't know what to do with it. And there are museums in the Netherlands who go along quite well with textiles and with fabrics and this tradition. And now at this moment we have a project in the museum with in the rooms where 5 of our colleagues are doing the registration for the Kant, and we find the most exquisite things. We find all kinds of things that we did not know about, and you see that the love grade, the number of people that start to like Kant and start a conversation with our colleagues is increasing. So one out of 4 of the people who come in the museum, about 300,000 a year, would like to know more about embroidery at this moment. And so it gives us a kind of spirit to take care and to be transparent about what we do. Just a kind of example. So we found a spot to build. This is the museum, as you see. This is the tower. And this is the park. You've seen this. And this is what we do. This is the model as we have now on our desk and what we are building. You see that the atrium is just a small part. In the museum, there will be 50% of the spaces on a daily basis accessible. You need a ticket for that, and then you can just walk around. And 50% will be visible with guided tours. And of course, a guided tour is a way to handle the people, the audience, also to control what people do. You can imagine what we do here. I still hope to meet this little girl, and it will be great to see this audience over there. This is the road to go into the area that you can enter with your ticket. And maybe you see a small reminiscence with John Sohn or the Wunderkammer, but we are still working on this because we think that there are great examples. The museum In Basel, the Schaulager has been mentioned already. The Hofmann family created that for the family. And you have to be well known to know in which room you are welcome. That will be open to you as long as you would like to see that only artwork in that room. But they have 3,000 works that you don't see at the same time because you did not make an appointment for that work. And a big example is, maybe you recognize it, it's the museum in Sao Paulo. It's a work by Lina Bo Bardi. She constructed this for Mr. Bardi, who was the museum director of the museum. And it's in the middle of Sao Paulo. There's a beautiful square underneath. It's a modern museum. But what she did was amazing. She made these, just concrete and glass. Sorry for the photo, it's not very clear. The concrete and glass walls, and she put in the things, and they are also visible from the back. And so all the artworks flourish in a way, and you see them as a crowd. You see them as a kind of group of people that you can walk through. The Louvre lens came 30 or 35 years later, but this was there already in Sao Paulo, and it's a great example and also very inspiring. So what we are planning at this moment, this is still under design, and it's not sure that we can do it because we need to find money in a capital campaign, but you still see the stairway. You can go both ways. There's of course elevators for audience and also for the handling, because all the handling takes place during the opening hours of the storage. But this is a kind of composition made by Marieke van Diemen and Winnie Maas in collaboration. Winnie Maas is the architect. Marieke van Diemen is a designer and artist. And we hope to find spaces in glass walls where we will display parts of the collection. It will be the collection as the storage will produce them. And so we can use one glass room for 1,000 vases. Or we could do a show with the dogs, all the dogs on the paintings. It could be very nice. It is great to wander around and to more or less fall into the collections and see what the variety and the diversity does. But you see that the structure also gives a kind of rooms that we can develop, and the glass parts sometimes cross the atrium, but they are close to the audience. But you can walk through them. So these stairs go through this kind of vitrines. And this is a photo by Henk Christoffersen, who is in the board of the new museum, and he sent it to me a week ago. I think that the colors are more bright than they are in reality, but you see that the 276 fundamental concrete poles are now underneath, are there, and the museum will open the structure in November 18. Then it's still empty, but the racks are there, and you will see that the climate is still not under control. And then within a year we will have the climate done, and the collection is in the new storage. This is of course quite an operation, but it goes very well. The museum still suffers. It's a pity to say this, because the water came from somewhere and it's still there, and the climate risks are still there, also for the exhibitions. So we think, and that's not in the open yet, but we think that in the not too far future also a renovation of the museum is necessary. And that will be a thorough renovation, because there's other problems next to the water as well. And so we are not finished with the museum, but we are certainly not finished with building for and in the museum. Thank you.